Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Using Your App to Minimize Risk During Critical Events. My name is Maura Sutherland, Marketing Director at Modo, and I'll be your moderator today. Our presenter today is Matt Wilmore, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Modo. A brief introduction of our presenter, Matt. Matt has been with Modo for approximately 3 years, leading the Modo product marketing and roadmap strategy. Prior to joining Modo, Matt was the lead mobile architect at the University of Notre Dame, a Modo customer. His mobile expertise and understanding of the experience and understanding of the user experience have helped to create some of the world's most engaging apps. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Matt.
Thank you, Maura, and thank you everyone for spending some time with us today, whether it's afternoon or morning for you. I really appreciate spending the time, especially in sort of a state as we are today. We're going to go through some information just on how you can use the app to do things like this, but really before we get into the whole meat of it, I wanted to help set the stage. And really, when we had planned to do a webinar on this subject even a couple weeks ago, the situation was much different. And so I want to be cognizant of how rapidly things are changing and how that changes the conversation we're going to have today. So as we know, COVID-19 or coronavirus is spreading very rapidly daily. New cases, we saw things like the NBA season was canceled last night. Even Tom Hanks has coronavirus, so it's going everywhere. And this is every day there's something new in the news in terms of what is not being allowed anymore, in terms of travel. A lot of our customers are being asked to, or asking their students to stay at home, or they're moving to online classes but allowing them to come back. But it's just a new world that's evolving very, very rapidly. And for students and employees that would typically use an app to stay connected and stay engaged, their world has just been really turned upside down. But it's different than something like a weather emergency where it's temporary and they're just saying, all right, everything's closed down for a couple of days, come back next week. This is something where we see it being long term, but we want to keep that momentum going. We want to keep the operations, the learning, the work, we want to keep that moving, just not at the office or not at the campus or the classroom. And so this is fairly new for a lot of people. And so the question to ask is, where does a campus app or workplace app really fit in to keep everything going? Knowing that nothing is shutting down, it's just that the physical building is shutting down and everyone's expected to be at home and continue to moving forward. How do we do that? And where does the app really fit in to help make that happen? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And this isn't intended to be only the answer for something like coronavirus, but this is just the example we have today. This is something that you can take forward both for other emergency situations as well as thinking more broadly about how to engage your audience that may not be in the building or in the classroom where you have a face-to-face engagement with them. This is just a broader idea or set of ideas to think about. And as I was researching for this webinar, going through news articles, I found this one, which is this. It's a silly little headline now where U.S. gets the first case of this mysterious Chinese coronavirus. And if you look at the date, that was 7 weeks ago. So 7 weeks ago, we had our first article saying, hey, the first U.S. case arrived, and look at where we are today, how fast that has arrived. And I can tell you from my years in higher education, I can't get anything at a university to move this fast. So the fact that 7 weeks ago, we had this AP article about the first case, this was in Seattle, the first case was detected. Now 7 weeks later, we're all working from home, schools are online for the remainder of the semester. There's a ton of change that's happened in an extremely short amount of time. And so that sort of fits into this whole idea of where does the campus or workplace app fit in this whole strategy. So I think there's a handful of considerations and goals that we want to cover today. We want to make sure that student and employee safety is really central to all the communication, and it's the primary focus. We want to make sure that the app, the campus or workplace app, is really a trusted information resource. We want to make sure that people are informed, not just with updates, but ones that are timely and relevant. We want to create an experience that goes beyond just informing to engaging and even empowering the people who use the app. There's one thing to do with just sending out information, but how do we take that a step further and maintain that continuity with our users? We want to make sure that messages that we send out are really personalized or individualized to maximize relevance. There are some pieces of the content in which the broad message is really applicable, and there's some based on individual attributes or the sort of the situation of individual users where you might want a more personalized message. So we'll talk about that. And then we want to make sure that engagement is continuing to be measured over time. Like we said, this is not a hurricane or a very short-term weather storm. This is something that could last weeks or months. And so we want to treat this like a campaign, measure how people are engaging or perhaps not, and then use that to evolve that strategy over time. So first, as we said, we want to make sure that student and employee safety are central to all communication. This coronavirus has really created this global health issue, and unlike what we've seen in recent times, and it becomes a safety issue for everybody. Even if they're not currently exhibiting any symptoms, we need to be as proactive as possible about getting the word out and communicating good information. The other thing to consider is that the policies that are being set are updating all the time. I was listening to the radio this morning, and they're talking about how retail operations are having to change their policies as we go forward. So for example, Starbucks, they're not accepting people to bring in their own cups anymore. It has to be something that they provide. How do you get tens of thousands of employees to know that information right away? The customers are not expected to know this. How do you communicate rapidly changing policies for tens of thousands of employees or students on a moment's notice? And so that's something to keep in mind, how we keep that safety at the forefront, not only for customers and guests of a campus or workplace, but also, the employees and the students. How do we keep that at the forefront? And then we want to make sure to keep these audiences informed with clear and consistent information that minimizes risk and reduces fear. There's plenty online today that'll make you scared and make you worried. And there is a certain amount of concern that everybody should have around a situation like this and how to best deal with this. But delivering that clear, consistent information from a trusted source, being your campus or workplace app, is a good way to reduce that fear and build some confidence in what people can do to stay safe. The second thing we want to do is make sure that the app is a trusted information resource. What we've seen in most cases, and this is not surprising, is that updates will be made to a website, something /coronavirus or coronavirus.company domain. And that's fine. That's where everybody sort of starts. But consider the fact that a lot of your users are not going to the website every day as normal means. They're going into the app. So to point people to reference people into the website as a place to get information is a disconnect between what you've been telling them up to now. So this app should really be a trusted information resource. There's a few steps in here to help make that happen. The first is that you want to identify a team of stakeholders and existing information outlets. Now, we're not going to be naive and say, well, clearly some people haven't figured out their communication strategy. We know that is all there. What we want to do in steps 1 and steps 2 is to grab all the people that might be part of this and make sure that the app is a core part of that central emergency communications plan. When decisions are made and strategies are drawn up with regards to how you communicate updates about things like coronavirus, where does the app fit in? And knowing that you have thousands or tens of thousands of users every day going to the app, how can we best leverage that platform to keep people informed? We also want to cross-link existing information channels to and from the app, things like the website, press releases, email blasts, etc. When somebody goes on the website and learns about how coronavirus is affecting a university or a workplace, the app should be one of the places that people can be directed to go to get on-the-go real-time updates. And likewise, people in the app can learn about other places, even external sources like the CDC or the WHO, that they can go to get other information. But we should all be sharing those links among the outlets we have. And then for step 4, this is equally important. We want to minimize the number of unique locations with information. If you have information on the website, and then you have the app, and then you have some other service, and then you have some other forum somewhere else, and they all have slightly different information, that can create a huge amount of confusion and fear among your users. So having as few places as possible makes it as easy as possible for your users to know where to go to get that information and begin to trust that as a place to go going forward. So we want to keep people informed. Now that we have this strategy in place, we want to execute it in a way that keeps people informed with both timely and relevant updates. So we have this point here to talk with stakeholders around a communications plan and a calendar. For something like coronavirus that will evolve over time, over weeks and months, it's really important to set up a schedule and a cadence for how updates should be scheduled. It can be really fearful for a user if they subscribe to get updates and never get anything updating. They will start to come up with their own ideas about what's going on or what's happening. Having a regular rhythm for new updates is really important to keeping people informed and confident in what is happening with the situation. I've made a point here that the campus and workplace app is a really unique weapon in this battle. If you think about things like email that are typically used or the website, they're passive, and you have to go check your email. You have to go to the website to get updates. With something like the app, this is one of the only tools that your users will have in their pockets 24/7, especially in a scenario like this. So this is an opportune avenue for you to communicate information about what's going on, what's happening, and if people need to make a change or do something differently, this is the tool in which to do that. At the same time, it is important to reach audiences against multiple channels to make sure they're being reached. So if you're doing an email campaign, make sure the app is part of that. If you're doing something on the website, make sure the app is part of that, and vice versa. So again, everything is in sync, and no matter how somebody decides to interact with the organization, either through the app or otherwise, they have that information right where they are. It's also important to automate your ability to repurpose information from your website into the app. Platforms like Modo Campus and Modo Workplace have features built in that allow you to take web content and put it into the app either as an iframe, either as a web view, or just taking the actual content and repurposing that, parsing that live into your screens. The important part of there is that you're not duplicating information, you're not doing rework, and you're making sure that all the information that's put out there is in sync. Very important there. Like I said before, finding that cadence to your updates is important. A cadence that is consistent but not overwhelming. I think about the example of apps like CNN where there's a developing story and there's an update every 15 minutes, but the update is there's no update. That is not something conducive to building confidence and trust in the platform, but neither is having an update and then going silent for 2 weeks. It's really important that even as things progress, even if there's very minor updates, on a regular schedule, we're continuing to communicate with those customers using the same platform, continuing to engage and draw them back into the platform so they can understand what's going on. This is a really steady drumbeat that we're talking about here, timely information, and this really helps to build that trust and reduce the anxiety about a situation. The more you know about something that is unfolding, delivered by the trusted source of you, the organization, builds that confidence and makes people more at ease, which is a health benefit in itself. And I would say there's an important context here, which is that there's not really a such thing as oversharing in this situation. I know we have a lot of conversations with customers around the topic of, I want to send out a notification, but what about people who aren't interested? This is not that situation. Everybody is interested in how to best protect themselves and what to do. So I wouldn't worry in this situation so much about getting too many people involved in notification. That's perfectly okay, and you'll have other opportunities once this issue has passed to really focus in your communication strategy. But this is clearly a great situation for some oversharing, just to make sure everybody knows what's going on. I would also recommend that we create an experience that goes beyond just informing. There's a really unique opportunity here, not just to inform your users, but to engage and even empower them based on what they know and what they're learning. If you think about what we have here in the app, it's not just the push notifications, it's not just the banner to go to the website. We have this whole suite of tools that exist that every app user has, or every app customer has rather, to really engage those users and even empower them to make intelligent decisions. And I apologize, I'm cutting off UNCG's push notification here a little bit, but these are just examples of sort of that first step where you have a push notification, maybe you have a link on the home screen that goes to somewhere like a website, and that's really the first step. There's so much more we can do with the platform, but this is where we start. The information that you share in the app really can and should be contextualized based on their environments. And some examples here are, a dorm resident versus an online student. There are different instructions you might want to provide to somebody who's online and living at home versus a resident of a dorm who's living with 100 other people and they're sharing restrooms. They're very different instructions just based on the situation. Think about an employee who's in a big high-rise in downtown San Francisco versus somebody who's out in the wilderness as a remote worker. Again, there are some common things to know, but there are some individual things based on those situations. It also is important here to give them opportunities to act if they are at the office or on campus, to not just engage them, but empower them, tell them where things are and what they can do to make safe choices. If you are opening the dining hall and there is hand sanitizer at the front, tell them that before they get there so they'll know that resource is there for you. If they're doing something where they're delivering meals to rooms or to offices or to homes, let them know about that so they can make a decision not to go to the store. If you're offering cancellations, I've seen some companies who are offering last minute cancellations on things like fitness classes, and they're not charging for those last minute cancellations. Let people know that. So if they're signed up for, let's say, a spin class at the university and they can't go and there's a fee, know that they can make that decision not to go and they're not going to be impacted. So they can make decisions based on where they are and what they're doing. It's also important and really interesting when we think about some low effort, high impact ways to keep the issue top of mind and provide a really unique message for all of your users. And there's a number of ways you can do that. I'm going to show some here, and then you'll see a picture of a new risk management module that Modo has created for all Modo customers. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the idea here is that you have, as an example, a module in your app. This can be one of the central points for all relevant information in FAQs. And when you think about what happens on, let's say, a university's website or a company's website, it's often very generalized and has a lot of information, which is important, but is really designed for everybody. The app gives you the ability to contextualize that based on individual personas, individual opt-in channels, and get down to the individual person and what they can do specifically. I say here you can use things like personas and opt-in channels for specific audiences. And if you haven't set up these channels, you can certainly do that today. Personas are something you can set up today. And long term, these are good ways to easily help people self-select their affiliation with a company or a university. Let's say I'm at a certain campus, I'm in a certain department, I'm this type of role. And that self-selection makes it a lot easier for you to send out messages that are more targeted to those specific individuals. And I'll talk more about the targeted notifications in just a moment. Another thing you can do is create opt-in channels for things. We typically use opt-in channels for things like running club or volunteering or continuing education students. But think about something like a hand wash reminder. You could pretty easily, and with zero code, by the way, none of this stuff involves any coding at all, as our platform does. You can create an opt-in channel for hand washing reminders, and you could very easily set up regular notifications that happen, let's say, every half hour or every hour between, let's say, the hours of 9 and 5. And anybody who opts into that channel automatically gets that notification every half hour to say, hey, don't forget to wash your hands. There are little simple things you can do like that go beyond informing to engaging and empowering. And suddenly your campus or workplace app becomes a really critical force in helping your users stay safe and stay healthy. Other examples you can do, things like My Persona, which is a Modo product that allows you to take things from a directory or from user authentication attributes and hyper-personalize the experience for users. You can use My Persona to drill down to very specific areas. Let's say we knew everybody at a company was signed into the app, but we identified those who work in clean rooms. and we had specific instructions just for them. Only they would see that on the screen, but those who don't work in the clean room wouldn't see it. There are an endless number of examples of how that could be applied in the application and create a very individualized experience for each user, yet addressing the same core issue of keeping people safe. Quick polls, which is a new feature in Moto 3, and you see here we have an example quick poll in our risk management module asking about travel plans being impacted. This actually serves two purposes. The first is that you are very easily able to collect state of mind feedback from your users. You can ask questions like, do you feel like you know how to keep yourself safe or keep yourself healthy? And if most of the people say no, you know what you need to do in the app. You can have more, and you can help let that feedback direct you. And you can rotate these quick polls out as often as you want. It takes about 60 seconds to create one and then add it to a screen. The other nice thing about quick polls is that it serves as a nudging tool for users. You can have a quick poll that asks, how long should you wash your hands? You know, is it 5 minutes? Is it 20 seconds? Is it half an hour? And that, even though that's a question and you know what the answer is, it serves as a subconscious reminder, oh yeah, I should probably go wash my hands, right? I need to do that. Little things like that built up over time can really help to influence behavior and get people moving the way that you want to, all with something as simple as a one-question poll. And I would say add some levity there. There's some really interesting things that you can do with the app that most people may not immediately go to, but certainly you can do this in the app and go to this engagement and empowerment state where there's a little levity there. So things like have users upload their favorite alternative handshakes. You know, is it an elbow? Is it a knee? Is it the back of the foot? You know, have people get creative, and maybe there's a contest there for the winner. There's a website, I can't remember the name of it, but allows you to punch in a song title, and it'll basically time the hand washing instructions to lyrics from that song. So what if you did that for your fight song? What better way to build school spirit at the same time build good hygiene practices? This is something that may not have been considered before, but this is an apt time to do things like this because it just keeps people informed, and it takes a little bit of the dread away from what the situation is. It has a little levity there again. And then wrapping in important information in the culture of your school or company, providing some cultural context to what you're trying to do. You know, why is it important as an employee that you stay safe? What is impacted as a company or as a school when our users become ill? And I think about another example is something that has passed through the internet from Round Rock, Texas, where they talk about wash your hands like you just cut jalapenos and you're about to rub your eye. You know, that's people in Texas can absolutely relate to that. What is your version of that? And how can you put that in the app as a way to really connect with your users and provide a personalized, culturally relevant way to say, yeah, I should probably be washing my hands more. So these are all ideas that you can use. None of these require any development or code, but they allow you to very quickly provide an experience that doesn't just inform, but empowers and engages. So another question we have here, as people are being asked to work online or study online for an extended amount of time, is how do you maximize and ensure that continuity? As I said at the very beginning, there's a lot of people for whom this is a very unusual situation. They're not used to having to study long-term from home. Here at Moto, we're doing the same thing. We're all working from home. And so how do you do that if you're not used to it? And so there's some questions to think about in that context. So we have hundreds of customers today who are using Moto Campus and Moto Workplace for a campus or workplace experience is really designed primarily, or at least some of the personas may be primarily designed around being at campus. So what if that is removed? And how would you build the app experience that you have today if your school was always online only? How does that reality change? What content is suddenly less important in your app than it was 2 weeks ago? On the enterprise side, what if your company was fully distributed from the start with no offices? And one thing we've seen with some of these companies out there is you're saying to everybody, use Zoom or RingCentral or BlueJeans or whatever your tool is. How many people at your company have never used that before because they've always had in-person meetings? Suddenly the app becomes a really great tool to educate your customers, or your users rather, on how to use a tool like that to be successful and collaborate. But you might be surprised at the number of people who work in a brick and mortar office but have never used any type of remote collaboration tool. And I alluded to this earlier, but look at the content that's in your app today. You just take a moment and then think about what's on your home screen. And what's really at the top? Is it things like dining, transit, maps, things like that? In a reality where for the next several weeks, we're going to be all at home, do those still really matter? Do those need to be at the top? Or are there more important things like this risk management module or online chat, if that is offered, that really belong at the top? So think about it from an online school or a distributed workplace perspective, at least for these next few weeks. And then this last point here is to think about tools that might already exist for users who are online or remote workers that could be extended to be used by traditionally in-office or on-campus users who are now themselves online and remote. One thing we have to reference here is we do have a number of schools at Modo with significant online user populations. So this is an example. This is Northern Virginia University. They have a Nova online program, and they have different personas if you are actually in or on campus versus online. You see some of these things like chatting with the help desk, chatting with HR or with the finance office. That may not have been a big deal if everyone's on campus, but now that everybody's away, this suddenly becomes a very important tool. So thinking about how you can have tools like this that may already exist, by the way, for online users or remote users that can now apply to the entire workforce, the entire student body. Things like online proctoring here, IT help. Instead of going to the IT department to ask for help, now you have to do this online. How can we do this? What's also really interesting about tools like this is that once coronavirus has passed, and there's going to be other situations like this in the future, but after we get back to some normalcy, it may make sense to look at what tools of these were successful and we should keep using and featuring in the app going forward. Another example here is University of Central Florida, one of our proudest customers. And you'll see here, this is not their main persona, but for online students, this is their persona. And you'll see here what is featured on the front page of the app is not things like transit and dining and maps. It's things like email and my courses and the calendar and things that matter to me as an online student versus somebody who's on campus. These are really important things to think about. Not terribly hard to make those changes in your app, but they make a tremendous difference in the lives of your students and employees who are being impacted by this. But you have in your campus and workplace app a really unique opportunity to make the very best of the situation and make a great experience for users who are being displaced from their usual place of work or study. I want to give another example of how this has been done in the past. And I was listening to the radio again this morning, and they were talking about schools here in Boston where there is a large arts and culture scene. So you have musicals and plays and art installations and all these events that have been worked on for months, and they may still happen. And the same thing is being said of things like baseball games. We're getting into the spring and starting to start these games up, but you may have games with no people in the stands. Same thing for the NCAA Division I. You're going to have this game but nobody there. So how can somebody who is planning to go to this play or this event or go to this game, how do you get them involved through the app? And so we have an example here with NYU, one of a Modo customer who has sort of this campaign where if you're not allowed to make it to, or if you're not able rather to make it to the commencement ceremony, they have everything in NYU Mobile. And so you can click into that notification and you see this message. Of course, this is just Modo's message center here, so you learn all about it. And then there's a link at the bottom to go view commencement. And so here is their publisher module that's all about commencement. This was their big 185th anniversary, all types of content in here. And you'll see this link to watch the live stream, and I can tap on that and see the live stream of commencement, even if I'm not there. So imagine this, but instead of saying can't make it today, the message is more like not allowed to make it today, but the same idea is there. Commencement, arts events, lectures, all these events that would typically happen on a campus or at a workplace can still happen online. And again, your campus or workplace app is the tool by which all these things are discoverable and engaging. And you actually may end up, believe it or not, with more virtual attendance than you may have gotten physical attendance, just because they're looking to stay connected with the school or the workplace. And these are opportunities to do so. And when they come back to campus after the coronavirus issue has passed, they will have retained that engagement with the workplace or with the campus. So there's a really unique, interesting opportunities here. We don't want to make light of the situation, but we want to make the best of it. And so this is a way to do that. Last couple of points here I want to make. The first is that we want to personalize the messaging to really maximize the relevance for the user. We talked a little bit about that earlier. You can identify audience segments that have unique sets of information. So I mentioned the clean room example earlier, but if you have citizens who are in different regions, let's say we have a bigger issue here in Boston than we do in our office in San Francisco, there can be different or more tailored information for people in the Boston office to reflect the different situation here. On campus versus online students, in office versus remote workers, we talked about that earlier, and then regional location. So if there's a hotspot in a certain area, they need to have communications that are really tailored for them. With our Communicate Premium product, you can segment communications down to the individual user using things like user attributes. So for example, if somebody is working in that clean room, or they're in a specific residence hall, a specific office location, a specific remote location, you can tailor that information to them specifically, so everybody's notifications that they get are all about what they specifically need to do to stay healthy. And then opt-in channels we talked about already. You can create these channels to receive tailored communication. So students are studying abroad, you can opt into those. And what we often see, by the way, is that it's not just the students who will opt in, but the parents as well, because they want to know what's up with their students' trip abroad. And so opt-in channels allow those parents to be involved and get those same updates without having to worry. Regional locations, again, or specific departments like outside sales or recruitment, there may be people who are on the road all the time, and the messaging you deliver to them is much different, perhaps, than those who are coming to the office every day. The last point I want to make here is that engagement should be measured over time and continue to evolve. Again, this is a unique situation in that it's not going to be over in a matter of days, but it may be a matter of weeks or even months. And it's important as you continue to add information to your app and engage your users, you want to measure that and make sure that that engagement is actually occurring in the way that you expect and evolve it. The nice thing about a platform like Modo Campus and Workplace is that it allows you to turn that on a dime and figure out exactly what's working and adjust as quickly as you want. So assessing, of course, how your audience is engaging with each channel, figuring out what's working or what's not working, conversely. Understand what's successful, fold that back into your app strategy and plan as you go forward, both for this event as well as the next one. What are we going to do for the next event, whether it's, it could be something like coronavirus, it could be a power outage, it could be a weather emergency, it could be some safety situation on campus. But these learnings can be applied both for the app and then broadly for your campus or workplace communication strategy going forward, as we say in number 3 here. Learning from this experience and then folding that into the plan that you have going forward so that the next time there is some type of event, you have all this experience and you're able to more quickly apply a situation or apply scenarios in your app that really work well and serve your users very well. I had mentioned this earlier, but we have a risk management module we've built to help our customers with this. So you can add this to your Moto app. This is available for all Moto Campus and Moto Workplace customers at no additional cost. Every customer will receive a message from their account manager with more information about how to get this module. If you are if you're in a special hurry to get this added to your app, you can also email communications@motolabs.com with information about this module. We'll be happy to help you. But again, this will be available for all customers at no additional cost and something you can add quickly into your app and then take advantage of that right away. So with that, that concludes the talking points I had today. For those of you who are interested in Moto and learning more about what the platform does, I encourage you to go to motolabs.com/demo, and we would be happy to provide you with a customized demo for your campus or workplace. And with that, I'll hand it back to Maura.
Okay, so this is the portion of the presentation where we take some live questions, which it looks like there are a few that have come in through the questions console. So we do have an interesting one here from Chris, which is, what if I already have a notification system such as LiveSafe? How does that work within my app?
So that's a good question. So we do have a lot of customers who use some type of system. LiveSafe is a good example. Rave is another one, and there's several of those out there. So the good thing about this is that you can leverage those systems and have the app be part of that. For examples, we have actually integrated LiveSafe's SDK into the Moto platform. So for those customers using LiveSafe, there is a native addition to your app that can be added that allows broadcast notifications to be sent in addition to users being able to report issues that they find. For example, if they think there's a suspected case, they could use the LiveSafe SDK to report that in real time and chat with a safety official. And other scenarios or integrations with platforms like Rave and others that support things like RSS feeds can easily be added into the app to send feed-based notifications through Communicate with that existing platform like Rave in place. So we can absolutely help with that.
Okay, so a question from Heather, who is curious about using Moto Workplace and trying to reach employees that may not have already downloaded the app.
That's a good question. And so in this, you'd hope that everybody already has the app installed, but in this rare case where they may not have it installed, that's a great question. I would say if people are still on campus or still at the workplace, I would advise you to have a signage campaign that you can do something very quickly. We actually have a marketing kit that's available for all customers that you can take and customize to your company or school, and then very quickly have materials that you can paste around the office. An email campaign can go out that says, hey, you should download the app. And really what is important here is to let those users know that the app is the place to go for this information. And if they don't know where to go, they may not go anywhere. They might just wonder or sort of make decisions on their own. But if you drive them to the app, you have an opportunity, especially at this time, to help inform people of where to go to get information. And then as you continue to get that information, they'll keep coming back to the app. But it may just be as simple as telling people, sending an email, sending a big Slack to say, hey, by the way, everything around coronavirus can be found in our app. Go download it right here.
Okay, so using the app as a critical event management notification system, obviously your audience is going to grow. You're going to have more content within your app. So someone here is curious, as my app audience grows, what, if anything, do I need to do to support that additional traffic?
You will not have to do anything. Our platform is designed to scale from the start, so that'll be taken care of. The only thing I would recommend that you do is think about that broader audience and have the demographics change. Have the use cases or the content that is being used most, is that changing? And that you can use our Analyze tool, which is part of every Moto platform for every customer, and you can look and see in real time what people are engaging with. But as far as capacity or scale, that is all handled by us.
Okay, so that is all that we have time for today. We appreciate you tuning in to today's conversation, and thank you, Matt, for giving us a thorough overview of the topic.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.